Welcome, one and all, to Project Geekology, episode 48. Today, we will, again, be the only podcast where you do not need to enter the Upside Down to listen to. You heard that right, you can listen to it just fine from the upside, like Hawkins. So, my name is Dakota, and I'm joined, as always, with...
Anthony, on the upside.
Yes. I like it. All right, so we're going to be talking about the final 2 episodes of Season 4 of Stranger Things, but we got other stuff that we're going to be jumping into. Before we jump into any of that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys what I've been up to recently. I've got a lot of projects that I'm working on, and I've just been having a lot of fun with it. I have recently jumped back into Avatar: The Last Airbender, like in a major way. You know how I do the MCU timeline stuff. I make notes on all the timeline information for every individual episode of shows and stuff. I'm doing that for Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm going to read every one of the canon novels. I'm going to read every one of the graphic novels. And I'm going to make a massive timeline for the Avatar: The Last Airbender universe, going from this avatar to this avatar to this avatar, Kyoshi, Yang-Chen, Korra, Aang, but, in order. Obviously, that's not chronological. So we're going to jump into that in the coming weeks and months on my end on Geekritique. So I'm really excited about that. I've been, going episode by episode, and I'm pretty much done with book 1 of Avatar. And then obviously I'll go into book 2 and 3, and then I'll jump into Korra, and then I'll start going back through the comics. But I recently read The Dawn of Yang-Chen, which is the 3rd book of the Chronicle of the Avatar series by author F.C. Yee. And it's such an interesting read because, you have all these visions and ideas of like what these different avatars are like based on future avatars, like looking back to them, like when it comes to Kyoshi, Aang has all these ideas that like she's this like really angry woman. She has, she has problems. She's gonna like kill people. But she's really not like that. And then she has visions of Yang-Chen before her, of this like, pristine person who has never done anything wrong. But that's not what Yang-Chen is actually like, according to this novel. So it's really about like breaking the mold in this series of, like what these individual avatars are like. So I'm really excited about that. As far as everything else, I don't think I've been up to anything else recently. Just watching random shows, reading random comics. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I know you've been up to a lot on your end, so I'm going to lead over to you. As you go, I'm going to ask you questions about what you experienced, at the con or whatever, but go ahead and introduce what you got to say.
Actually, before I get into my stuff, I think it's an appropriate time that you're diving into the Avatar stuff. I was just saying the other day that I wanted more Avatar content. So the Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite cartoons, if not my favorite cartoons. This is something that I had been singing its praises since high school. I was watching it in high school during its original run, and it was really cool when it came onto Netflix and everybody finally got to see it. It had been on Netflix before, actually years ago.
This was the perfect storm.
This time around,
it was the first.
Yeah, it kind of gave it like a resurgence
because of COVID. Everyone was indoors, and
that's right.
Everyone needed stuff to binge on Netflix or whatever. So when that dropped, everybody and their moms was watching it, and then Korra afterwards, and there was a huge resurgence to the point where the creators of the show, Michael DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, decided that they were going to start their own studios because they have so much more to tell with different eras of the Avatar. So Avatar Studios came out of that, and they're currently working on 3 feature-length films. The first being Avatar Aang and his crew, but like as young adults instead of teenagers.
And when you think about it, the Avatar universe was actually set up perfectly to be explored. There's so much to it that you can do, down to the places, the animals. Yes, there's the different incarnations of the Avatar. The Avatar is almost like the Doctor from Doctor Who. There's different incarnations. Although every Avatar is a different person, they're all connected to the fact that they are the Avatar, and they're connected to their past avatars. So I think that that's just a really cool universe. And like I said, the world is just so magical. I mean, we have an episode about Avatar: The Last Airbender that everybody can listen to.
We have 2 episodes.
If you haven't yet.
We have 2 episodes.
Yes. We have 2 episodes. We have like a non-spoiler. So if you haven't seen it yet and you want a non-spoiler take on it, then there's that episode for you. But if you have seen it and you want our insight on it, we have a spoiler episode. Dakota and I will definitely dive into The Legend of Korra. That's just something that we're going to have to, because we both love the Avatar universe and we have thoughts on it. And then we're going to tell you them thoughts.
You know, the Netflix series is coming out probably first or second quarter of next year. So, because they're pretty much done with the actual principal photography of it. So they're just in the back end now. So we're getting close to seeing some fresh footage of a live action Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I'm tentatively excited to see, because I think they're in the right headspace in terms of like where they are in terms of creating it. So I'm excited about that, but I'm nervous that it's just going to be another, M. Night Shyamalan flop.
Oh my goodness. It's funny that you say that, because in my mind, I was literally about to say, hopefully they get his name right. They don't call him Ang.
I think they're in the right headspace. They're actually like...
I mean, honestly, I am tentative also because of that, really what went down between the creators and Netflix. So hopefully they've learned from their successful shows and their unsuccessful shows, and they respect the source material. The source material is already amazing. You don't have to do anything crazy with it. It's already there. Just follow it, and then if there's some sort of liberty that you want to take, make sure that it's not a liberty that spits in the face of just how amazing this show is.
And at the end of the day, even if the live action show doesn't live up to the animated series, we'll always have the animated series. But we also have a lot more Avatar content coming forward and down the pipe, because they have so much stuff that they're working on. Yeah, so I've been really into the Avatar stuff, and I actually found a podcast, not to take listenership away from our podcast, but Nickelodeon has their own podcast called Avatar Braving the Elements, where they have the voices of Avatar Korra and Prince Zuko from, Legend of Korra and Avatar: The Last Airbender, respectively. And they go episode by episode and just break down. So they start with The Boy in the Iceberg, then they'll interview like the creators of the show, and then they'll do the second episode, The Avatar Returns, and so on and so forth. So it's a really interesting dynamic, because they're giving a fresh take on, like what it was like actually doing some of the filming or doing some of the recording, and like bringing behind the scenes knowledge to a show that everyone loves. So it's worth it to check out if you want to listen to more podcasts after this, but you better stick around for this one, because it's going to be really good.
Yes, I agree. We did say that we were talking about Stranger Things Volume 2, the second part, but we're actually going to be talking about Avatar this episode.
Wait, really? I got so much to say.
I hijacked it. But yeah, so if you're interested in hearing more about our thoughts on Avatar: The Last Airbender, go check that episode out. And I have actually seen that episode. I actually have seen that podcast that you're talking about, Dakota. I just haven't really had the time to sit down and give it a listen, but I do want to. And it's actually really cool, because I have been seeing Dante Bosco, which is the voice for Zuko. He's actually been making rounds in different conventions. He was in the one in Orlando called MegaCon, and he was actually also at this one in Miami called Supercon, which I'm going to be talking a lot more about right now.
Jump into it. Let's go.
So Florida Supercon is a convention. It's in Miami Beach, Florida, and it kind of jumps around as far as dates. This year it was July 8th through the 10th. Last year it was in September, so the space between last year and this year was pretty short. But it's actually really cool. This year, I feel like I've been really just in this convention mode. I went to one in January called Otaku Fest, which I submitted press passes for. So fingers crossed that we get that, and I'll cover that convention also in this upcoming January. And so Florida Supercon, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm just gonna kind of get some of the bads out of the way so I can talk more about the goods. I came into this convention feeling a little nervous because I wasn't sure if it was going to be good or not. They literally had a few people drop at the last minute.
That's weird.
Yeah. They had some celebrities drop at the last minute. One being Freddie Prinze Jr., which I was a little sad because I kind of wanted to meet him because, he's our boy in Rebels.
Yeah.
Jim Lee, he was supposed to be there. I actually really wanted to meet Jim Lee because Jim Lee, his art is just, he's drawn especially like Batman. He's done a lot, but his Batman is something that lives in my mind when I think of the comic book version.
Right,
of Batman.
it lives rent free on anyone who's read like
rent free.
Anyone who's ever read like a DC comic book, his visual stamp is so synonymous with DC currently, even though he's not necessarily like an artist today so much because he's more on like the producer side of DC at this point, but his style has like transcended into how other people draw, you know, these characters. So it's super influential.
Right. And so I was pretty upset about that he dropped off. I wanted to see him. Like, I actually wanted to meet him because I'm thinking, I mean, you've seen in my room that I have that Jim Lee Batman and the Nightwing, that little...
Yeah. The classic cover.
Yeah. So that made me a little nervous. I was like, okay, these people are kind of dropping off. And to begin with, there wasn't really too many major names that were in it. There were some voice actors and some actors that were in there. Florida Supercon seemed to pale in comparison when it came to MegaCon. MegaCon just really blew me away. I hadn't really gone to MegaCon in many, many years. And so just coming into this convention, I was like, oh my gosh, like they have these people dropping off. There's really not many, you know, big names. But as far as going into these conventions, I find ways to enjoy myself, even if there's not really that many named talent there.
So what's the big draw for conventions for you? Because I know when I go to New York Comic Con, I don't really care so much about who the guests are per se, as much as I would care about like the con floor and the individual panels and everything that everyone goes through.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
So I would say that the guests do matter for me because that means that we should be getting a panel from them, you know?
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
So if you're getting a whole bunch of voice actors, say from Overwatch, you know that there's going to be an Overwatch panel. They're going to be talking about Overwatch and maybe even reveal stuff for the upcoming Overwatch 2. I'm just using it as an example. Also, another reason, I had people that I had planned on going with, but their plans kind of fell through. So most of the weekend I was actually by myself covering the convention, but I actually bumped into some people that I didn't expect, like from high school or people that I had worked with in the past. So I really wasn't by myself because I had those people, and I talked to a lot of the artists, there's just so much stuff that you can see at conventions, and just when you thought that you've seen everything, they'll prove you wrong. And so I did buy a couple things. There's this cool person that I had met. He was one of the people that had a stall. He was in Artist Alley, so he was one of the exhibitors. And I have a heart for people who they're trying to do something within, you know, entertainment, whether it's, you know, books or art. And I applaud them because, I mean, you're really just putting your heart out there and people are just examining it, you know? And one that kind of give him a shout out, and he's actually given us a listen and stuff too, is somebody named John Paul Amaya. And he has this book, and it's kind of set up as like a script, but it's almost like an anime as far as like the cover and whatnot. And it's called Adventure Start. It's really cool because it kind of reminds me of when I read through Cursed Child, you know, because you're reading a script.
Okay, yeah.
And they actually had a reading of it on Twitch, which was actually pretty cool. So I had spoken to him, and he was really, really cool. And I spoke to a whole bunch of different artists, and kind of got connected with them and pretty much put them onto the podcast and what we were about. But I had met a lot of really, really cool people. I actually bought, and I think I sent you a picture. I bought a bottle opener, and it's the Kingdom Key from Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, yeah, you did send me a picture of that. That looked really cool.
And so I thought it was cool because the person who made these, or the person who has these bottle openers made, he doesn't want them to look like obvious bottle openers. So that's why he situates them in the way that he does. And so I thought that was really cool.
One thing I love about cons, and maybe you'll back me up on this, is that when you're on the show floor, when you're in Artist Alley, you can pretty much find whatever you're looking for, or in terms of like fandom, you know?
Exactly.
There's, whether you're looking for a specific character on a t-shirt, or you're looking for ocarina or something, or you're looking for some original comic book art or whatever you're looking for, what's really cool about, you know, Comic-Con and Supercons and other stuff is the abundance of stuff on the show floor that you can just peruse, and it's almost like a mall designed for you.
Right. And the cool thing is that, especially with a lot of the artists, is that even if they don't have what you want, a lot of them take commissions.
That's a good point. I've never done that personally, but that's cool. That's cool.
I have not either, but I may in the future. But it's actually cool because since I have been going to so many different conventions, I have actually bumped into artists that I've seen at these different conventions, and we like remember each other, like, hey, I remember you. Like, oh, hey, yeah, how have you been? Yeah, it's so cool because conventions, literally anybody can go, but you can establish kind of your own community. And that's kind of been what these Florida conventions have been for me, is that a lot of these people, they'll come in, and even people from like out of town, I'll meet them at these different conventions, and I'm like, hey man, I remember you in this convention. I didn't know that you were going to be down here, like living it, like from like Chicago, or like one guy, I think he was from like Georgia, and he had gone down to all these different conventions down here in Florida. So I thought that was really cool.
One thing that I got recently at last year's New York Comic-Con was this three-piece poster. So it's like one big poster cut into threes, so you have to like get each individual framed. But it's a really cool concept because he basically takes popular moments in pop culture or fiction and draws them in the style of ancient samurai art. So I have a picture of Mandalorian, of like him and the child walking through the streets of Navarro City, and you have like all the bounty hunters trying to like, you know, take him down. I think it's like episode 3 or 4 of the original season of Mandalorian. So it basically takes that concept and turns it into ancient samurai art, and it's really just it's one of the coolest pieces that I've ever bought at a con, and I'm so happy I did. I wish I had the artist's name offhand, but I'll send a picture to you soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd definitely love to see that. But yeah, so, you know, Florida Supercon, it's fun, but I will say that I'm a little disappointed that they're owned by ReedPop. ReedPop, they have the resources. They run the convention that you're about to go to in October, NYCC. You would think that, okay, we have a convention that's in Miami Beach. What can we do to kind of spruce this thing up? And I just hope that they're not trying to kind of run it down to where they just don't, you know, they don't justify having it at all, you know? I mean, last year they had Hayden Christensen, which was pretty cool. I wanted to get an autograph from him, but that was
now. Do you
it
think
was a little too expensive?
Do you think that that's their plan, is to run it down to the ground? Because that would be the worst business strategy of all time. What I find interesting, and you'll probably have a first-hand experience with this, most of these conventions, aside from 3 or 4, are big news circuit conventions. So you have the big one, San Diego Comic-Con. Everyone looks forward to San Diego Comic-Con every July because big news from all the different media groups and organizations and companies comes out. You know, this past San Diego Comic-Con, we had a little bit of news trickle out of like Warner Brothers, but on the Marvel front, it was, you know, a flood.
Right.
You know, they announced like 15 titles.
Right.
But when it comes to other stuff like New York Comic-Con, that's more TV oriented. I've noticed they do a lot of like trailers for TV and not news about that in terms of New York Comic-Con. And then in Brazil they have CCRP or CCXP or something like that. A lot of DC news comes out of there because Brazil just loves DC Comics for whatever reason. And WonderCon, sometimes you get some news out of there, but other than that, other than those 4, you don't really get much new news from these individual, like, smaller
Right.
cons. Like, I've never heard of anything coming out of Supercon that, you know, will, like, make the news for the day or whatever.
Right. So
Do you think they need to spread
So
the
I'm
love
gonna-
a little bit, or do you think that this is just a different experience?
it's funny. I don't think you've been to a normal convention, have you?
I've only been to the Comic-Cons. I've been to to be honest, no. I went to an anime expo in LA, but that was years ago.
I think Anime Expo is actually pretty big. At least like now it is.
It was
Anime Expo is like pretty well known.
It was
now.
pretty big. It was pretty big, but I don't remember honestly I don't remember much. It was my first ever con, so.
Which is cool. I mean, aside from, was that your first con?
No, I went to Wizard Con back.
Well, I consider BlizzCon being a pretty big con.
BlizzCon, I went to I think it was the first or second BlizzCon. It was 2007. I think it was 2007.
Good old days. That was
good
like,
days, yeah.
like I said, I know you're busy. Let's get some content going for at least World of Warcraft Classic, because Lich is coming out in next month.
Oh, cool.
Wrath of the Lich King, and I think that was like prime World of Warcraft. So
Yeah, for sure. That was a good time. All right, so what do you think is going on with Supercon and these smaller conventions?
So these smaller conventions, I don't expect a lot of big news to come out of them. And so a lot of the smaller conventions, it just really boils down to budget. The Otaku Fest, that's a small time convention. So if they even have like any actor or voice actor that I even know, I'd be like, oh wow, that's cool, they got them. But with Miami, Florida Supercon has been around for a while. And I've been around where they've had good rosters of people. And that was actually when it was owned by, whoever it was that owned Florida Supercon beforehand, before Reed Pop had bought them. And to be fair, Reed Pop has only had them, I think, for a couple years, because they bought them in 2019. And then right after that, COVID hits. And so we've only really gotten 2 of them. But like last year, other than Hayden Christensen, I had noticed a little bit of the change in the quality of it. And it's not that it's a low quality, it just seems to be a tad, neglected. And like I said, I don't expect there to be huge news to be coming out of this. That's what San Diego Comic-Con's for, even NYCC. But I will say that I guess for me, I like it when a convention has a good draw capacity, because then that means that you're gonna get there's gonna be more different types of people that come. So if you had Hayden Christensen and whatnot coming in, so I was just feeling that some of these smaller ones get a little, or at least Florida Supercon can feel a little neglected. I like anything that draws in just more guests, because then that means that more people will want to come in. And I think that for me, the biggest draw of going to a convention is the people, the cosplayers, the artists, the different various stores that come in. It's really cool, the type of people that you meet and the things that you see, and that's my favorite thing. Overall, I still had a really good time at Florida Supercon. Maybe not because of the guests that came in, but really more so the people that I met, people that I connected with, the different things that they had there. Dude, they had like this whole room that had a bunch of gaming consoles and gaming computers, and like you could just go over there and play with your friends. They had N64s, dude, like just everything.
That's cool.
And
one of these
that's
days,
one of the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah, one of these days we got to get you saddled up with like a nice interview kit, so that you can do some interviews for the podcast and talk to people about what makes them tick, or like why they keep doing what they're doing, and talk about the craft of what they're working on, and maybe link to some of those people online. That'd be really fun. I think
that'd be cool. I mean, if you wanted to do something like that for NYCC, that'd be cool. I mean, you could talk a little bit about NYCC when you come through. Whenever we record around that time that you go.
Okay. All right. We'll figure that out. But we'll stick to Supercon for now.
And so, yeah, like I said, it's just the small things that I really enjoyed. I still found a way to enjoy myself there, even though I didn't really have anybody there. I had some friends come through. I had a friend that came in like really just one of the days, even though he planned on going the whole weekend. And so, yeah, like I said, I spent most of my time kind of just wandering around, looking. And I bought a couple things. The bottle opener that I told you about, and I actually that's where I bought my first pair of D&D dice.
Ooh.
And that was actually what kind of drove me forward into finally starting to play D&D, which I'll talk a little bit after the Supercon discussion. So yeah, overall, Supercon was a fun experience. I enjoyed it. I will say that so far this year, the best convention I've gone to is MegaCon, and hopefully in the upcoming future, Supercon kind of like picks it up a little bit now that
is the venue big enough? Is the venue big enough in Supercon for it to be a better convention?
It's pretty big in size. Like they don't use the full venue.
Oh, okay.
It's, like a lot of these convention centers. So I don't know. So you haven't really gone to some of these other conventions, but a lot of them are in these giant places that almost look like airplane hangars.
They're convention centers, yeah.
Right.
They're meant to like hold multiple conventions, yeah.
Right. And so not the entirety of these venues are completely filled, to the brim with things to do. And I just think that as far as content, they could do a little bit better.
Okay.
But I will not say that it wasn't fun. I did have a good time. And it's always cool to check out the side stuff in the conventions. I'm used to the main exhibition floor and really just seeing the main things. Well, there's tons of random stuff that you can walk into in the rooms that they have in the convention centers. There's people that were playing D&D there. There's people playing board games, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, panels of different random things. It's really, really fun. So I got to check a little bit more of that stuff out. I actually made that a point this year to kind of do that a little bit more, although I didn't really do that at MegaCon. I did that at Otaku Fest. So overall, I had a good time. I'm hoping that maybe next year is a little bit better, but we'll see. I would love to go to MegaCon next year also, maybe cover that in an upcoming podcast. But so yeah, that's a little bit of my thoughts on Supercon. Hopefully maybe one year you can come down, Dakota, and then it'll be both you and I covering the convention, and you get to see what a normal convention is like, or a smaller convention is like.
Yeah, maybe for next year's NYCC we'll have a big I'll get some press passes for that, hopefully.
Oh,
that would be cool.
I'd love to join y'all again.
Yeah, maybe for some Geekritique / Project Geekology content.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool.
That'd be great, yeah.
So you mentioned that you got some D&D dice. I've played D&D on and off for a couple of years now. Jen actually plays a lot more than I do, because she has a D&D group with her old colleagues from work that she's been pretty consistent with for, on and off for about 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So you just started up a campaign, right?
Yes, I did. I found a group of people. There's really so many different ways that you can find a group to play D&D with. There's literally all sorts of ways. There's Roll20, there's something called Start Play, there's Discord groups, and for those that don't have groups around them, people that they know to connect with to play D&D. And so I found a group where we're going through the latest adventure book. It's called Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. And
okay,
so
I've actually seen it, yeah.
And so we're going through that, and it's interesting because I'm learning the fundamentals. I'm still trying to understand it, but as a gamer, I really enjoy it because I've played so many different types of role-playing games. And this one takes it up a notch because you can play a role-playing game, but there's still limitations. The most advanced and most versatile and customizable role-playing games can't really even touch anywhere near what Dungeons and Dragons does, because you can literally do anything.
Yeah,
I was talking to my friend the other day, and he's got a group going, and he said that they do these. They go through a main quest, but right now they're doing a whole bunch of different little side quests, and him and his group of people literally bought a tavern. It's just random things happen in D&D.
Sometimes you can get away with so much fun stuff just by negotiation or just charisma or whatever. One time I was using an orphan character. He was a little orphan. I don't even remember his race. I just remember he had a pet rat. And for whatever reason, I decided, and we were...
Scabbers?
I didn't call it Scabbers, no. Should have. But we ended up facing off against giant rats, and for whatever reason I decided I was going to use my little pet rat as a weapon, and I threw it at the head of one of the rats in front of me, and I rolled a nat 20. So like you have a 20-sided die, and it's up to the game master or the dungeon master to determine what happens when you roll certain things. If you get a 1, then it's obviously a miss. You get nothing. If you get a 20, it's like above and beyond what could possibly happen in a normal situation. So while I was throwing my pet rat at this giant rat, I rolled a nat 20, and it turned out that I threw it so hard it went right through the rat's skull.
Oh my!
And it's part of the discretion of it was just a good time, and it's just like stuff like that you could never do in a video game because there's no rules for that. But with the power of imagination, with the power of rolling die and trying to figure out like what is possible with the characters and the sets and the enemies' limitations and powers, whatever. It just so happens that sometimes crazy stuff can happen, and that's part of the fun of it.
Right. And with video games, you can have the most creative imagination, but what happens within the game really just goes as far as what has been programmed into the game.
Right.
And you can even do things that are procedurally generated, but it's still that system's not perfect. I mean, it's gotten better, but still there's a lot that you just can't do it.
Even procedural generation is
limited.
Well, yeah, it's limited by the boundaries that are set by what is coded into the program,
Exactly.
If with something like Dungeons and Dragons, it's only limited by the person's imagination or the imagination of the group playing the game. So
exactly. Yeah, it's really, really fun. I've been enjoying it so far. We've gotten in a few sessions already. Right now, our group we're investigating this squabble between these two food stalls that's in the night market of that city, and so we're trying to solve what it is. My character is a wood elf rogue, and so I kind of just like I picked the race. I was like, okay, I think wood elf sounds cool, and I kind of want to do a rogue because I didn't want to do a caster because there's a lot involved with casting that I'm just not comfortable with yet. I just want to understand the game first before I start making a caster.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's really cool because I've actually been able to do a lot of stealth stuff so far, and I haven't rolled a nat 20 yet, but I've gotten close. I've gotten an 18, I've gotten a 19, but with my dexterity being so high, like it just
when you get something that's like 15 and above, you're set. Like you're good to go. Like whatever you want to do, unless it's like something crazy, you could pretty much do it in D&D.
Right, unless they like set the DC super high.
Right. So that's pretty cool. So you said you've done a couple sittings.
Yes, which my latest session was actually last night as of recording.
Cool. So how many people are playing?
There's 5 of us right now. Maybe a 6th is on the way.
5 including the Dungeon Master, or 5 plus the Dungeon Master?
5 plus the Dungeon Master.
Okay, that's a good sized team.
So
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Hopefully that keeps going.
It's been really, really fun. Yeah. We actually have 2 clerics, but they're like 2 different types of clerics from like different places, different domains.
Do they clash or do they get along?
No, they get along. So far, we have a warlock.
Part of the fun of all of this is when people get into the character, like you build your character, you try to understand where they're coming from, their level, their wealth, their level of pompousness, their level of intelligence, and just play along with that, like role play that. It's super fun.
Yeah, so that's really what I've been up to, playing D&D and
well,
just having a good time at conventions.
D&D actually ties in really well with what we're going to be talking about today. Even though they haven't been playing it in these last 2 episodes that we're going to be talking about, it did kind of start off this huge issue a lot with Eddie anyway. He's introduced through as the Dungeon Master for the Hellfire Club, which is pretty big.
This is a great segue into the topic, which is going to be our part 2 to the Stranger Things.
Yeah. It shouldn't be shouldn't be super long of a discussion just because we've already talked about most of the season, but there are some huge things that we just haven't talked about yet, and it's been a couple weeks. So I've done a little recap of it, and I'm super excited to talk about it.
We start back with Nancy. Remember, Vecna is in her mind.
Yeah, so we're not really sure what's going on with Nancy because she hasn't had that clock issue prior to this. You know, like all the other victims of Vecna have had that like 4 chimes, and then Vecna comes and like takes them. Max, it's time. Yeah, so we left it with a huge cliffhanger. You know, instead of Nancy going out of the Upside Down and back into the real world, she kind of like goes into this mind trance where Vecna tells basically the entire story of like what's happening with you know, like who he is and what he plans to do with 11. And he's like, you better tell 11 all of this.
It's a classic villain move right there.
Classic.
So yeah, it's a classic villain move, revealing everything that they're going to do, which, you know, really does lead to their downfall. And
I know.
So yeah, we find out in the first part that he is Henry, aka number 1, and that 11 is the reason why he's in the Shadow Realm, aka the Upside Down.
Yeah, and what is really interesting about these couple episodes is we're following a couple storylines up until this point. You know, we have Hopper, Joyce, and Murray up in Russia. We have Will Byers and Mike and his brother and all these individuals driving to try and find 11. And then we have 11, who has been taken by Papa and I forget what the other guy's name. Dr. Brenner? No, Dr. Brenner is Papa. I forget who the other guy is. There's like the nice doctor, and then there's Dr. Brenner.
The good doc, bad doc.
Good doc, bad doc, yeah, for sure. And so you have a bunch of different individual storylines, but then you have what's happening in Hawkins. And, you know, finally Vecna like releases her, and, you know, they start going into all of this information, you know, like what's happening with Vecna and like what his plan is. And Max is basically detailing like, I wonder if, you know, 4 chimes means that there's 4 gates. And we've already determined that wherever Vecna takes the life of someone, you know, Pretzelfies them, he opens up a portal into the Upside Down. So it's like, is there 4 different gates that he needs to open, and is Max the last one? So she's on the edge of her seat trying to figure out what to do with herself.
I think my favorite one was you know, Watergate.
Yeah, Watergate, clever.
I was like, gotta love Dustin.
Gotta love
corniness. But yeah, so we see that, or we come to that realization that there's a gate that's set up at every single one of these kill sites, and that's what Vecna is waiting for. He's waiting for all of these. Well, he's waiting to establish these 4 gates so that really his retribution comes into play.
Yeah, and unbeknownst to all these individuals in Hawkins, all the kids, we have 11, who's actually in a sensory deprivation chamber in, I think they're in Nevada. Is that what was determined? It's almost like a Area 51 type.
They're literally in the middle of nowhere in a pizza shop, and the sensory. No.
This
I know you're talking about.
This is when they're back at the military base.
When they're military base. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Nevada. It was Nevada.
Okay. So
like Area 51-ish.
Yeah, although they don't name it, it is kind of like what we would assume an Area 51 type base to look like. So
right, the setting looks like it too.
It goes
like a desert.
Yeah, it harkens back to earlier in the show's history when, you know, she would enter a sensory deprivation tank and have like walking dreams of, you know, walking through people's minds. So she sees what Max is saying, and she realizes that her friends are in need of help. So she realizes she needs to get out of there quickly. And she's developed her powers again, but not to their fullest extent, really. So she's
just touched them a bit.
Yeah.
She's starting to like get to that point. Her powers aren't what they were when she last had them.
Oh, so the good cop is Dr. Owens and the bad cop is Dr. Brenner. Although I don't think Dr. Brenner, we figured this out in this episode, in episode 8, that Dr. Brenner isn't really a bad guy, or he doesn't think he doesn't think of himself as a bad guy. He does care for 11, but I think it's more about what he's invested into 11 that he cares about, maybe, you know? Like it's a really twisted type of love that he doesn't want to let go of.
Right, like the thing is that it's so weird with him because you do see that he cares, but it's just so twisted that it still leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, you feel bad for him, but not for the reasons you would feel bad for a normal character. You know, like you pity him because of the position that he's put himself and Eleven in. So he basically hijacks the resuscitation of her powers for himself. You know, he imprisons Dr. Owens and basically hijacks the entire operation so that she doesn't leave, because that's her plan, you know, like she wants to leave. Dr. Owens is like, if that's your choice, then that's your choice, but he's just like, nah, and he injects her with some sedative and she goes crazy. She like telepathically like throws him against that sensory deprivation chamber and, you know, almost kills him probably, or wants to, but ends up passing out before that.
Right, and she did warn him, like, if you stop me, I'm going to take you out.
Yeah. While all of this is happening, the army is basically, or whoever the army dudes are in this, I forget their names. I forget even like what are they CIA? I don't know. But they're coming to get her because they believe that she is the reason all these deaths are happening. They believe that she's the cause of this, even though there's really no good reason to believe that when they have a perfectly good villain elsewhere. But during all of this, we have the group in the pizza truck. We have Argyle's pizza truck, you know, the Pizza Bros, or Surfer Bro Pizza. What is it called? Yeah, I think it's called Surfer Bro Pizza. They're heading down and they're trying to figure out where the heck she is, and they conscript Susie for help so that they can call the computer that is the number of whatever, this place in Nevada, and they end up finding that location. But on the way, one of the most touching scenes for me happens on the way. We have Will Byers, who clearly has feelings for Mike. You know, it's something that's unspoken, it's unsaid, but we know, you know, and you just feel bad because at this time in history, it's just not something that's socially acceptable. It's not something that is accepted and is, you know, allowed or applauded, whatever. So he's kind of like in a box of like who he is supposed to be and what his relationship is with his best friend. You know, I feel terrible for him because obviously you see he is just eating himself away inside. But there's that really nice moment where he like, it's like a call to action moment where he shows the painting that he made for Mike. And, you know, it really lifts Mike's spirits. And he says like, 11 needs you. 11 will never stop caring for you. But really, I think he's talking about himself in that instant, and he's just using 11. And it's just it's a tough scene because you don't want him to hurt. I guess you could say, but Mike doesn't reciprocate that. Obviously, he's in love with Al, and there's that just terrible scene where he like cries, looking the other way. It's tough.
Jonathan Byers notices this though, and it kind of like unlocks like this love for, or like this, not that he didn't love his brother, but he was just kind of so caught up in his own thing that it kind of woke him up in a sense that like his brother needs his help. You know, his brother needs him to be there. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that was a call, or like a wake-up call for Jonathan to be the brother that he needed. And it's interesting. If anything, because they didn't really do too much with Jonathan's character arc throughout the entire season, that was a bit of a growth period for him in terms of his relationship with his brother. So I like that. They end up getting to the military base.
So the crew in the Surfer Bros pizza van, they kind of catch up to where Elle is. They find the tracks for the place that leads up to where, or they find the path where going up to where Elle is, which is where Project Nina is. And so while there's that scuffle kind of going on inside between 11 and Dr. Brenner, the military comes in and really just raids the place. And so while the army is really just like kind of throwing down on the MPs that are with because I mean, that's the military police that was actually inside.
Yeah.
That was inside the base, which gets you thinking like, okay, so this is military versus military. This is kind of crazy. Or is this like the military police that is like it's like a secret sect?
Yeah,
like
there's
a secret sector.
Clearly two different factions of this secret sect of the military. You know, is it CIA? Right. I don't really remember, but there is two clearly good guys and bad guys on this side of things. But anyway, Dr. Brenner gets Elle out of there as soon as the military starts like raiding, and we actually have a really epic scene outside of the Project Nina where they have a helicopter in the sky taking shots, and they're trying to take out Dr. Brenner and then Elle, and they do shoot Dr. Brenner down, and he eventually passes, but not before saying a few things. But they can't get Elle because she's using her powers to just bring the helicopter down, and it crashes down onto all 4 of their military vehicles, basically incapacitating them and stopping their tracks, because there's no way they can catch up with the truck at that point.
She does it in true Star Killer fashion.
Yes, that was a really cool scene. That was like, it was really epic, and she's just screaming the entire time like, ah. But she ends up going up to Dr. Brenner afterwards, and they have, I don't know if it's a heart to heart, but it's definitely a heart from him to Elle. He's like explaining his actions, and he apologizes, and he just wants her to forgive him, but she doesn't say anything.
I know, it's, yeah, because like I said, he still just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. He had his reasonings, and he was doing it from a place in his heart that he thought was good, but it was just still really crazy and corrupt in a way. I mean, it's almost like Thanos. I mean, the reason why he justified what he did, snapping away people, was because he wanted the universe to be balanced and not there to be too many people out there, He did whatever he wanted because he wanted to like unlock her true potential.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, anyway,
it was selfish in the end of the day.
It was selfish, but anyway, he got what came of it, and we don't know if 11 forgives him, but I think she understands him at that point. And there's like a moment where she's just like, it's like a self-resignation, like, I'm not going to be mad at you anymore, but what else can I do, because you're dying. So anyway, they head out of there and they head towards Hawkins. They have to like book it to Hawkins because there's a serious issue with everything that's going on down there, but there's no way that they can get there in time. So they end up going to a Surfer Bros Pizza, and like you said, they used a cooler, like a large cooler,
right,
a lot of salt, and just make themselves their own version of a sensory deprivation chamber, which is really cool of a concept. At this point we can talk about what's happening with the team down there, because for the time being, I think that's pretty much all that happens on that side of things.
Right. Yeah, so pretty much for the whole part of that action sequence, that's everything that's happening as far as action in Hawkins, they're at that Surfer Bros Pizza. They never make it to Hawkins until after that happens. We still have the crew up in Russia, and they reach out to somebody in Hawkins, and they find out that all this stuff is happening in Hawkins. And so during their prison break, they find that, remember that shade or that shadow that was inside that containment unit? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that shadow in that containment unit, they come up with the idea like, okay, if we can't make it to Hawkins right now, let's destroy this thing. They come up with a plan to head back to the prison where this thing is, to kill it, to really help wound Vecna. In some kind of way, they want to help the kids because they know that the kids, they're like, okay, we're not going to make it to them, so we got to do what we got to do. So that's what their plan is, and Yuri is in charge of like their escape, which is a helicopter.
Yeah, Yuri has been kind of like dragged into their escape once again against his wishes, but I think he's more compliant in these episodes just because he realizes what's at stake a little bit more, and
he kind of plays around too.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Remember, like they get him to fix a helicopter.
Oh, and he didn't want to. He kept messing around with it.
He didn't want to. He kept messing around with that until Anton or Antov like kind of convinces him, like, what, you're this guy that was reputable in this war. Like, what happened to you? Like, you're like a shell of your former self. And kind of convinces him to really do this.
Yeah, absolutely. So they actually, and I like that you brought that up, that the best thing they can do is to wound the upside down creatures because they operate on a hive mind. You wound one and they all get it. They all feel it, and we've seen that
right.
before.
And they noticed that with the vines, that when they touch the vines, they know where they are.
Yeah, definitely. So there's definitely an interconnected
Yeah.
web throughout the Upside Down that also reaches over to Russia. So that's pretty cool. So they go back and they kind of realize that, oh crap, all of these things have been let loose. I think at this point we should jump over to what's happening in Hawkins, because we're coming to a point where once they wound it, they weaken Vecna, and the Hawkins dudes can, fix that up. But the Hawkins kids, they create this elaborate plan where some of them are going to go into the Upside Down and distract Vecna, while others are going to go in the real world at the old mansion where he did his original killings, and they're just going to draw him out. And they have this huge plan. A lot happens, a lot goes wrong, but a lot is really cool.
Something that your wife posted kind of made me laugh, that talked about season 1 Nancy. And that season 1 Nancy, really, like, she couldn't even swing a bat. But then you got her in season 4. She's got like she's got a sawed off like shotgun. She does the actual sawing off and makes it into a sawed off shotgun. So she really like becomes like a really beast of a character by this season. And they still have these kids that are going around looking for Eddie this whole time also.
Yeah, the basketball dudes, the basketball bros, they're still hunting for Eddie, and they're convinced that, like, he has brought this like satanic plague on the town, even when given evidence otherwise, like it's not this, it's something else. He's so blinded by the fact that Chrissy is dead that he doesn't even give Eddie Munson a second chance. So during the raid on Vecna's mansion, he ends up showing up with Max and Lucas in the room, and Max has just gone into a trance, and it looks really terrible from anyone walking into that position. Like it looks like Lucas has done this to Max. So the basketball dude's like, he's got a gun in his hand, he's like pointed it at Lucas, and it's just a big brawl breaks out at the worst possible time.
Yeah, so the plan for the team in Hawkins is that they figured out that Vecna becomes weak when he's in somebody's mind. He goes into the house in the Upside Down and he gets to work. He's not there. Since he's in the minds, he's not paying attention to what's happening.
Yeah.
So Max decides to become bait, because she's like, he had marked me. I still feel that he's kind of there. So let me be the one that he goes after. And then Robin, Steve, Nancy are the ones that go into the house. They're the ones that go into the house. Eddie and Dustin are in charge of distracting, because the house is being pretty much guarded by the bats and the Upside Down. And so like everybody, they just come up with all these plans. It really was wholesome before that, because everybody was in unison. Mm-hmm. Everybody had this common cause, and so everybody was really connecting. But it was also very dreary, because they knew the potential of any of them could die, and so it was wholesome and very just sad at the same time.
Yeah. So what I think the most epic thing that happens in this scenario is the guitar solo that Eddie decides to throw on top of his house in the Upside Down, where he's drawing as much attention away from Vecna and the other team as possible, where he starts playing Metallica's Master of Puppets in just literally the most epic way possible. And I don't know if you saw it, but like the actor who played Eddie Munson was invited by Metallica like on their tour to like just have a sit down, and they hung out a little bit. So that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And I actually seen a breakdown video of an actual guitarist looking at the actor, the way that he played Master of Puppets, and he was pretty accurate with his finger placements.
Yeah.
And when it came to the actual like guitar solo, they kind of zoomed in. It might have not been him that actually did it, because guitar solos are pretty hard. But the fact that he had put in the work to actually learn to play this song really goes far to that actor. I mean, he really did a great job in bringing that character Eddie Munson to life. And I mean, to be honest, he was my favorite character in this season. He was very just like misunderstood, and
He deserved
But
another season.
the people who, yeah,
He definitely deserved
yeah,
another season.
he definitely deserved another season, and I'm glad that there was at least people who knew him for him. You know,
Yeah.
I think that something tragic in any story would be anybody that goes down and nobody knew who that person actually was.
What's cool about the actor, by the way, is Joseph Quinn. I didn't want to go without saying that.
Yes.
Well, he did a fantastic job with Eddie, but I like what you're saying because he definitely did have a redemption in the sense that he was kind of like a coward before. Like he kept running from all the problems that we had seen earlier in the season, and he didn't want to be a hero. But when he needed to be,
Right.
he was. That's what made his story well-rounded. And
Right. He brings attention to that. But yeah, after that solo, Dustin and Eddie kind of hold him off, and Eddie doesn't. So Dustin and Eddie go to escape into the right side up, Hawkins, and Eddie makes the decision that it's probably not a good idea for them to leave right away because they could go back to the house, right? And so he sacrifices himself by continuing to distract these bats, and he gets killed by them.
yeah, it's pretty terrible. I mean,
But there's actually a scene in this episode that's even, to me, a bit more sadder than his actual death.
in regards to Eddie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, so meanwhile, Vecna is in Max's mind, and we have her reliving memories of good times, because he
Right.
automatically brings her to bad times. But she, in her own mind, runs to the good times, and it kind of stumps him for a little bit, but not for long, because this guy's a master at like telepathy and all that. So he ends up going ham with all that. But in the meantime, like he's about to take Max out in her good memories, and then 11 shows up because she can also walk
Right.
through memories as well. And man, that was cool.
Yeah, that was cool. Max had ended up at one of the school dances, but everything was empty. And with 11, she was searching through the memories. She found a really early memory of Max before she ended up in Max's like actual memory where Vecna was about to take her out. And then we had like a really like cool Star Wars scene where they were using the Force.
Yeah, it definitely felt like Star Wars. Kind of had some sequel energy vibes. But yeah, so eventually Vecna does get Max, and technically he does kill her. And he does the whole pretzelfication thing in the real world,
Yeah.
and
Man.
and blinds her too. But 11 doesn't allow that to happen. Like she stops. She like kind of goes into her mind and tries to keep her alive. So by the end of it, Max did sacrifice herself to Vecna, and he opened up a portal where he needed to, but she didn't necessarily die because 11 basically saved her life.
Yeah, because at first 11 in that fight, she was doing pretty well, but then Vecna gets the upper hand, so she's kind of down, and Mike is pretty much trying to help like boost her up by speaking to her. And so yeah, man, when I saw Max starting to be pretzelfied, I was like, oh dude, they gonna do this? Are they gonna kill her?
They messed up.
I was like, oh man, they said they killed my boy Eddie, now they're trying to kill her? Can't be killing too many people now.
I know.
Too many main characters. But yeah, so yeah, I thought it was crazy that 11 was able to kind of, keep her alive, but she ends up in like a coma.
Yeah, so in doing all of this, opening the 4 gates, basically they kind of connect. Hawkins opens up. It's a big open wound basically into the Upside Down, and that's kind of where our town is left. But in so doing, like some people die. Like we see the basketball dude, I forget his name, the one that was attacking Lucas, get ripped in half.
Yeah, he gets like vaporized. Yeah, like he gets like when it rips open, he gets ripped open and kind of vaporized in the same also. Like it's kind of crazy. It's crazy that they call it an earthquake. I'm like, bro, that is not an earthquake. You call that an earthquake? That is opening up into something else.
Yes. Yeah. The average viewer would be like, well, that is literally hell, But anyway, so
I was like, hey, for real. I'm like, dude, our earthquake. I don't know many earthquakes that open up into this gate of hell that I see right now.
Yeah, so that it's craziness all around. And actually, I actually dislike this ending a little bit. It's not that I don't think it's cool and I don't think that they can make a cool story out of it, but I like the fact that it's almost that Stranger Things has been like small town problems up until this point.
Yeah.
Now it's the entire town is involved to the point where there's no looking past it. You know, it's not just like possible supernatural occurrences. It's basically a gate to hell has been opened up in your town.
I think my biggest problem with the season, and I'm interested in seeing how they actually do this 5th season, is that there was a sense of it almost felt like a final season, the way that it was structured, how the episodes were so long, the fact that they were fighting, they found out who this creature that was really doing all these things were. It really felt like the final season of the show. They really, to be honest, they could have ended the series on the season. They could have changed the ending, and it could have been a final season. I don't know how they're going to continue it. I mean, they're going to continue it because Vecna kind of got what he wanted, but
and actually we find out because they go back into Vecna's past when he first opened up, when Eleven first threw him into the portal. He lived, you know, kind of like a weird lonely life for a little bit, up until the point where Will Byers was taken into the Upside Down, and that's when basically like he was given purpose, and that's when he found the Mind Flayer. And we always assumed that he was the Mind Flayer's 5-star general, but it turns out he's controlling the Mind Flayer, and that's in that scene. So he's actually the big bad of Stranger Things, which we didn't know about until just these 2 episodes. So it'll be interesting seeing what they do with it. But you're right, they could have found a way to tie all this up, because the way that it was structured, it definitely felt like an ending. But I'm so curious,
especially with that last episode being the length of a movie,
a long movie too. It was 2.5 hours. Jeez.
2.5 hours, yeah. Like a feature length one could be like an hour. They could have done like an hour and a half to 2 hours, and that would be like a movie. But yeah, that's like an MCU movie right there.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that it was a really epic finale. I think maybe like a 9 out of 10 for me. I kind of love the idea that it's like most of the town has no idea what's going on. But now I think the whole town has to be involved in some capacity, unless everyone leaves.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
So the scene that I was talking about was that I really liked the scene between Dustin and Eddie's uncle. And I'm gonna be honest with you, like it kind of like made me like tear up a little bit.
Yeah. You feel bad for the uncle.
Was because I really do. And actually, I'm gonna be honest with you, like his uncle's a good guy.
Yeah.
Because he maintained Eddie's innocence this whole time. He's like, dude, I don't care what you guys saying. That's not Eddie. This is not Eddie. And the way that Dustin like gives him this confirmation, there's some problems with that scene, but I do like that Dustin gives him this confirmation like, look, he was a good guy, and you're right, he was innocent, and if people knew who he was, they would have loved him.
Yeah, it's true. And you just see him like tear up because, you know, obviously I'm assuming it's his only living relative first and foremost, but not only that, he cared for the kid. He didn't want to see him, you know, and now the whole town will never know that story.
That's what made me sad, you know, in that moment. But I was glad that we had a scene like that, and that the uncle really just wasn't on his own, knowing that Eddie was innocent, and knowing that Eddie was a good guy. I will say that, like, I would say my only problem would be that they didn't really give him an explanation about like what happened. There was like, yeah, you know, I was with him, and you know, he died, you know, being a hero, saving people. Like most Guardians would be like, okay, well,
I need more information.
Like,
yeah.
Like what are you talking about? Like what happened? Where is he? Where's his body? Where's he at?
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
Like what happened to him? So I mean, there's a little bit of a hole in there.
I think we're going to find that the next season we'll see characters that have died in the Upside Down come back to...
You think so?
I think so. Not as the characters that they were. They'll probably have the memories of the characters, like Max's brother and Eddie and maybe Barb from the first season. I think they're probably going to come back in some capacity and be used as like pawns by Vecna. So it'll be interesting seeing the dynamic there, if that's even like what they're planning, because I don't know. I have no idea what they're planning in that writers room right now. I know that they just started writing.
I know they actually started working on it. So
yeah, they just started.
Well, they started I think production, right, or working on it.
Yeah, on Twitter they had like a couple days ago. It was they have an account called Stranger Writers. It's basically like the writers room for Stranger Things. Sometimes they respond to fan questions. They posted a picture of like a whiteboard with like Stranger Things season 5 in the corner. So it's clearly like they were about to start working on it. So cool. I'm happy. I'm happy to get more Stranger Things. It's probably one of the best new IPs of the 2010s. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm happy we discussed it. What do you want to discuss next time? You want to go into the Matrix?
Yes. Let's go into the Matrix. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to us here for episode 48 of Project Geekology. Next time, we are going to be covering The Matrix, the original movie from 1999 by the Wachowskis. So thank you so much for spending some time with us, learning about Supercon, learning about Dungeons & Dragons, talking about our hobbies in terms of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and of course, our discussion of Stranger Things. If you enjoyed it and you want to talk to us more, you can always leave a comment on whatever podcast app you listen to, leave a good review, and follow us on Twitter at pgeekology and Instagram at Project Geekology. Thanks, guys.
Thank y'all.
Have a good one.